The streets of Harare pulsed with a strange anticipation. It was not the usual traffic buzz or the chatter of vendors calling out their wares. This was different. Word had spread like fire tearing through dry savanna grass. Maxwell Chikumbutso was back. Not with another wireless generator that had once made governments tremble. Not with a secret military drone that had vanished before anyone could replicate it. This time, he had something far bigger. Something so bold it threatened the very foundations of the global auto industry. A sleek, modestly priced car. Just $14,000. A price tag that almost made it sound ordinary. But it wasn't. It was a car that never stopped running. No fuel. No charging stations. No solar panels tucked under its hood. Just endless motion. An infinite heartbeat on wheels. It rolled down the road in complete silence. No engine growl. No fumes curling from an exhaust. Just a hum so soft it sounded like the earth breathing. The body looked modest, compact, practical. You could park it outside a corner store and no one would suspect it held the power to rewrite the laws of transportation. But under its skin, hidden deep in its core, pulsed a technology so advanced that even the engineers at Toyota, Tesla, and BMW were losing sleep. The kind of technology whispered about in late-night strategy meetings. The kind that could make entire fuel economies collapse. The moment you stepped inside, you noticed the difference. There was no battery percentage glowing in the corner of a digital screen. No fuel gauge quietly ticking down. No signs of range anxiety. Nothing to monitor. Because there was nothing to run out. The car just kept going. And going. As if it had no beginning and no end. Maxwell called it a proprietary self-generating energy system. A term that sounded like science fiction to most people. A fusion of RF energy harvesting, magnetic drive mechanics, and converters so efficient they made old physics textbooks feel obsolete. To the untrained eye, it was sorcery. To Maxwell, it was just physics done properly. The demonstration began in a forgotten warehouse on the outskirts of Harare. The place smelled of rust and dust, but tonight it smelled of history in the making. A small crowd gathered. Some were journalists clutching cameras like weapons. Others were engineers desperate for answers they could not find in textbooks. And a few were people who had simply heard rumors of the impossible and came to see if it was true. Maxwell stood at the center like a man who had walked out of a prophecy. He was calm. Not cocky. Not smug. Just calm, like someone who had already fought this battle in his mind and won. The car sat beside him, a quiet sentinel under the glow of industrial lights. The rules were simple, Maxwell said. We start from zero. Full stop. No tricks. No cables hidden under the floor. The car runs until someone decides to stop it. And then he got in. No showmanship. No fireworks. Just a key turning in the ignition. The car hummed to life like a whisper. No roar of an engine. No vibration trembling through the floor. Just a soft, hypnotic hum. And then it moved. Silently. Effortlessly. Like it was gliding over the surface of the earth instead of gripping it with rubber. Minutes turned into hours. Hours slid into days. By the 48-hour mark, the skeptics were sweating. By day 4, some of them were no longer speaking. Their silence spoke louder than any argument. They were staring at something that should not exist. The impossible machine, headlines would call it. But impossibility had always been Maxwell's playground. Still, whispers spread like cracks in glass. Suppression. Threats. Anonymous calls from powerful voices that never spoke twice. Big Oil had noticed. The auto giants had noticed. Governments had noticed. And none of them liked what they saw. Because if Maxwell was right, fuel would die. Charging stations would die. Every pipeline and tanker would become relics of a dead age. Someone, somewhere, made an offer. A blank check, big enough to make most men disappear quietly into a life of comfort. Maxwell refused. That was the day the threats began. Not veiled hints. Not polite warnings. Real threats. The kind that made even fearless men glance over their shoulders when the night grew too quiet. Maxwell knew what was coming, but fear had never been his compass. So he pressed forward. Tonight was not just a demonstration. It was a declaration. A challenge to every empire built on scarcity. The car circled the test track again, its quiet motion mocking every combustion engine that had ever coughed smoke into the sky. Then Maxwell raised the stakes. He pulled the car into the warehouse and began the load test. Every light flicked on. Headlamps at full beam. Air conditioning roaring like a winter storm. Seats glowing with heat. And then came the real shock. He plugged in an industrial-grade power drill. The kind of thing that would choke a normal car battery in minutes. The drill whirred. Steel shavings curled from its bite as it chewed through metal. Every device in the car was pulling power now. Lights. Screens. Machines. But the dashboard didn't flinch. The readout held steady. No voltage drop. No flicker of depletion. As if the car was drinking from an invisible river that never ran dry. A journalist from Johannesburg finally broke the spell. Maxwell, where is the energy coming from? You can't just create it out of nothing. Maxwell looked at him like a teacher looks at a child asking why the sky is blue. I'm not creating it, he said. I'm tapping into it. It's already here. Around us. Saturating everything we see and everything we don't. All I've done is find the door that everyone else ignored. And I walked through. The words hung in the air like thunder without sound. Some scoffed quietly, clinging to their disbelief like a shield. Others just stared at the glowing blue orb in the dashboard, pulsing like something alive. It was mesmerizing, almost biological in the way it brightened and dimmed with a rhythm that felt like breath. Maxwell smiled faintly, then motioned toward the warehouse doors. Time for something bigger, he said. Outside, under a tarpaulin, waited another shape. They pulled the cover back and revealed a second machine. It wasn't a car. Not exactly. It looked like the offspring of a truck and a fighter jet, with angles that hinted at speed and armor that whispered survival. If the first car was a miracle, this was a declaration of war. Maxwell called it a transport system, but his tone made it sound like that phrase was too small for what it really was. If you think the car is impressive, wait until you see what we've done with scale, he said. The journalists leaned in, cameras flashing like lightning. But before they could pepper him with questions, a voice crackled through his earpiece. Maxwell froze for half a heartbeat. The smile vanished. The voice was urgent. Max, we've got inbound signals. Multiple drones. High speed. Not ours. Journalists noticed the change in his face before they heard the words. They shifted nervously, their eyes darting toward the night sky beyond the warehouse doors. Maxwell's jaw tightened. How long? Less than 4 minutes. Get everyone under cover, he ordered. Security moved fast, ushering people into the reinforced observation shelter. The night air outside throbbed with the distant hum of rotors. Maxwell tapped a hidden panel beneath the steering column. The dashboard changed. Smooth glass became an interface of war. Glowing arcs spun into existence, forming patterns no journalist in that room had ever seen. You weren't supposed to see this part, Maxwell muttered. The orb in the dashboard pulsed faster, its glow spreading like liquid light across the interior. A low hum filled the air. Not just sound. Vibration. It pressed into bones and teeth, a subsonic growl that spoke of forces too big for human senses. The first drone broke the horizon. Black as oil. Silent as death. Then another. and another, until there were 4. They flew in tight formation, slicing the sky like a flock of mechanical predators. The crowd inside the shelter pressed against the glass. Maxwell stayed calm. He spoke to the car like it was alive. "Let's see how they handle a little turbulence," he whispered. The hum deepened. The air seemed to ripple, like heat waves over asphalt. The drones wobbled mid-flight. One shuddered violently, its lights flickering like a dying heartbeat. And then it fell, spinning out of control, its rotors screaming in protest before it slammed into the track in a blossom of sparks. The crowd gasped. The second drone veered hard, colliding with its wingman in a spray of steel and shattered sensors. 2 down, 2 to go. Maxwell's hand hovered over the console. The orb's light swelled until it painted the cabin in ghostly blue. The hum became a roar without sound, a pressure that made the very air feel heavy. The third drone faltered. Smoke burst from its joints before it spiraled downward into the dark. But the last one held steady. Bigger, stronger, armored. Tanashi's voice came through the earpiece, sharp and urgent. "That one's shielded. Your interference won't stop it." Maxwell's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't stop it. We break it." He tapped a sequence on the console. The car split open like a flower blooming from steel. Panels slid back to reveal a crystalline array that shimmered like frozen lightning. The orb pulsed once, twice, then unleashed a wave that bent the air itself. The sky tore open with invisible force. The last drone buckled midair. Its shields flared like oil on fire. And then they shattered. The machine crumpled like paper under a fist and dropped from the sky in a trail of smoke. Silence followed. The hum faded. The orb dimmed. The car closed itself, seamless once more. Maxwell exhaled slowly. Then Tashi's voice came again. "Not clear, Max. You just lit up half the defense grid on the continent. They know where you are now." Maxwell gripped the wheel. "Then we don't stay. We drive." The car surged forward. Its tires screamed once, then gripped the earth like claws. The countryside blurred. The chase had begun.